the All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Can everybody hear okay? Okay. My name is Jennifer Piper. I work for the American Friends Service Committee, and we're calling this press conference this afternoon to protect the life and the livelihood of Oscar, who is detained right now by ICE at the Geo Detention Center. So bienvenidos a todos. Mi nombre es Jennifer Piper. Trabajo por el Comité de Servicio de los Amigos Americanos y estamos aquí hoy para describir una situación que está amenazando la vida del señor Oscar, que es un miembro de nuestra comunidad. Él está siendo detenido en el centro de Geo por ICE. We're going to talk a little bit more about what the conditions are and how we got to this point. But we're very concerned for not only Oscar's safety and his health and well-being, but also the health and well-being of all of the people detained at Geo as well as the employees there. So estamos muy preocupados no solo por Oscar y por su bienestar, pero también por todas las personas que se encuentran detenidos en el centro de detención de Geo en este momento y los empleados del dicho centro de detención. So to give us a little bit of background about what has been happening with Oscar in his case so far, we're going to hear from his lawyer, Mr. Henry Hawthorne, and then we're going to hear from his sister, Alma. So para entender mejor qué está pasando en el caso de Oscar, vamos a escuchar ahorita de su abogado y después también de su hermana, qué ha pasado hasta esta fecha y por qué estamos tan preocupados por él. So we're going to hear from them what has happened up to this moment and why we are so worried and upset about the way the situation has been handled so far. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to his lawyer.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Henry Hawthorne. I am a full-time immigration lawyer. I have been practicing immigration law for nearly 2 years now. And while I don't want to focus this on me, I will say that this is not my first case dealing with a detained client. I have actually been representing people in detention pretty much for the full time for these past 2 years. And before the outbreak of COVID-19, it was generally a fact that I would be spending at least part of every week at the detention centers. So I am familiar with their previous medical practices. But to turn to Oscar, here's the ironic thing is, I am his attorney, but one of the concerns we have is that I have not yet been able to speak with him. But let me just get to this. So Mr. Oscar, he was ordered deported in October of 1999, left the United States, and stayed out of the country for a good 20 years. Now, he tried coming back in last year in May, and to this day, he is still detained by ICE. Why that is, I'm not quite certain. What I can tell you is that he was moved here to Colorado in March of this year and spent 2 months in Sterling, apparently for some sort of probation payment of fees. Then last Thursday, he was told that he was going to be repatriated to Mexico, but that is not what happened. What happened is that he was transported by officers from Sterling to the Immigration Detention Center at Aurora. Now, what we know from his sister Alma is that when he arrived in Aurora on Friday, he already had a high fever, and that this fever was persistent even through yesterday. That when he called his sister yesterday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he told her that he had asked for medicine to bring his temperature down, and they had told him, the detention center staff had told him that they don't have that medicine, and he still remains in the medical unit in quarantine. Now, his sister contacted my office just yesterday afternoon, and as is our usual practice, we immediately wanted to get in contact with him to evaluate his case and see what his possibilities are. But when we attempted to call the detention center, we were told that we couldn't speak to him because he's in quarantine and unable to talk. And he has tested positive for some sort of virus. The testing is still ongoing. Since then, I have left messages for the chief medical officer there. I have tried to speak to his deportation officer and so far have gotten no response. I should mention that this gentleman is 58 years old. He has hypertension and he has an enlarged heart. So according to medical reports that we have previously received, medical studies we previously read about detained conditions, people who have hypertension, who have heart conditions are especially vulnerable to the coronavirus. And therefore it is concerning in the extreme that we actually 4 or 5 days into the detention do not have any test results either way on whether he actually has coronavirus or not. And also it is concerning because I know from previous experience that the medical care at ICE in Geo is appallingly substandard. I had a client last year who went into the hospital in septic shock after a mumps outbreak had been raging through his pod for about a month. So to know that this gentleman who may be at risk of coronavirus is in that situation, is in the care of people who have demonstrated repeatedly a real indifference to the well-being of their charges is extremely distressing. And the last point I really want to make here is that the idea here, our concern is not so much to legalize his status, to give him any benefits he wouldn't otherwise be entitled to. What we are simply asking for is that he be given the medical care that anyone in detention is entitled to, and that his case be processed expeditiously. He has been in detention for over a year and he has had no court, he hasn't been deported, he's had no interviews, nothing has been done. And if he was going to, if he just needed to be deported to Mexico, then that should have happened already, because now there is a distinct possibility that he could contract the coronavirus and in the worst case scenario die while in the custody of this government. So that is why we have such major concerns about this case.
And I do know we have Spanish language media.
Ok. Buenas tardes a todos. Me llamo Henry Hollithorne, soy un abogado de inmigración. He estado ejerciendo durante los últimos 2 años y estoy aquí hoy para hablar de mi cliente, quien se llama Oscar. Y bueno, la primera cosa que yo quería decirles es que aunque yo soy su abogado porque la hermana de él me contrató, yo no he podido hablar con él porque cuando hemos llamado al centro de detención a la dependencia, donde él se encuentra, me han dicho que como él está cuarentenado, entonces no puede hablar ni con su abogado. Entonces, para que ustedes pues tengan un poco de información sobre su caso, esto es un señor de México que fue deportado en octubre de 1999. Él no ha vuelto a este país, él no volvió a este país, mejor dicho, hasta el año pasado, en mayo. Y desde ese entonces ha estado en la custodia de ICE, o sea, durante todo un año. La mayoría de ese tiempo él estaba en Texas, pero en marzo, por razones que realmente no conocemos, él resultó trasladado aquí a Colorado. Pasó 2 meses en Sterling, Colorado, y luego el 14 de mayo le trasladaron para Aurora, aunque le dijeron que inicialmente que iba a ir a México. Resulta que él resultó en esa dependencia que se encuentra en Aurora. Lo que se sabe es que el 15 de mayo, cuando él finalmente se entró ahí, él ya tenía un fiebre muy alto. Y entonces inmediatamente le pusieron en cuarentena. Hasta el día de hoy no tenemos resultados de ningún examen de coronavirus. O sea, no sabemos si él se lo tiene o no. Lo que sí sabemos es que ayer él sí tenía fiebre. Él llamó a su hermana a las 2 de la tarde diciéndole que había tenido una fiebre muy alta durante la fin de semana y que cuando había pedido el medicamento para la fiebre, para bajar la temperatura, le dijeron a él que no tenían esa medicina. eso nos preocupa mucho porque hemos visto, yo como abogado quien he estado representando a detenidos durante los últimos 2 años. De hecho, antes de que se abrió todo esto de la coronavirus en marzo, yo pasé casi cada semana, pasaba parte de mi tiempo en la dependencia. Entonces, yo sé que el cuidado, la atención médica que prestan allá es infrahumana. Es una cosa, yo he visto unos clientes míos que han casi muertos en la custodia de ICE. Y entonces para nosotros todos es muy preocupante ver a este señor que ya tiene hipertensión, tiene 58 años de edad y tiene ya la corazón muy grande, el corazón muy grande en esta situación, porque él está corriendo el gran peligro de poder morir mientras esté en la custodia del gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Y lo que yo pues quiero enfatizar es que no estamos pidiendo ningún beneficio especial para él, no estamos tratando de conseguir ningún provecho migratorio, solamente estamos pidiendo que le den la atención que merece y que, que expiden su caso de una manera razonable, porque ya ha pasado 1 año y él ni siquiera ha visto a un juez, ni no ha tenido ninguna entrevista. Entonces, por eso es que nosotros estamos muy preocupados por su situación.
Muchas gracias por esta explicación. Thank you so much for that explanation and sort of overview of the entire case. We're going to go ahead and take questions here at the end after everyone has already spoken. I think some of the questions will be answered as we're going through. So vamos a tomar preguntas al fin. Después de todos han hablado, creo que vamos a contestar algunas de las preguntas en el camino. Ahora quiero presentar a la hermana de Oscar, se llama Alma, y ella va a explicar un poquito su preocupación por su hermano, qué es lo que quiere, cómo han luchado para que él sea soltado y en un lugar seguro, cómo ha sido el último año para la familia. So I want to go ahead and introduce Alma, Oscar's sister. She lives here in Longmont in Colorado, and she's going to discuss how this last year has been for the family, the way in which they've been very worried for Oscar's health, and in particular since the onset of this pandemic, and what they've been doing to try and win his release. So, Alma, si quiere presentar, y Ana va a interpretar por usted, entonces si después de como un párrafo pare, si ella puede interpretar.
Yo soy Alma, la hermana de Oscar. Si tienen alguna pregunta para mí, pueden hacérmela. Yo les contestaré con toda la honestidad posible.
Primero, ¿puedes explicar un poquito cómo ha sido el último año con Oscar detenido, lo que han intentado hacer para liberarlo de detención y todos los lugares en que él ha estado?
Él se cruzó por El Paso en mayo del año pasado y estuvo detenido en El Paso, en el centro del Paso. Yo fui a visitarlo como 2 veces. Y de ahí lo movieron, de ahí lo trajeron una noche a Carrizoso. Esa noche durmió en Carrizoso y otro día lo trajeron a Amarillo y durmió otra noche en Amarillo. De Amarillo lo llevaron de vuelta otra vez a Carrizoso y de Carrizoso se lo llevaron a Big Spring. Ok. Cuando él estaba en Big Spring me dijo que iba a salir el 7 de mayo ya para México. Y mi sobrina y yo nos fuimos a México porque quisimos esperarlo en México, que ya iba a salir para mirarlo porque ya era mucho tiempo que él estaba encerrado. Y nunca llegó a México. Y cuando nos vinimos, él me llamó y me dijo que estaba detenido en Aurora, que lo tenía migración en Aurora y que decían que lo iban a llevar a Sterling. Y pasaron como una semana y él me llamó de Sterling y me dijo que estaba en Sterling. Después él me empezó a decir que había muchos contagiados en Sterling y yo también empecé a escuchar que había muchos contagiados del COVID-19. Y yo siempre le decía que se preocupara, que no se preocupara, que únicamente tenía que cuidarse y lavarse las manos y mascarilla. Y dijo, tengo mi mascarilla rota, no creo que me va a servir mucho. Yo le dije, con la camisa, cúbrete con lo que puedas, intenta que no te dé porque eso es muy peligroso, se ha muerto mucha gente. Esa es mi preocupación, la gente que ha muerto y que él ahorita tal vez tenga la enfermedad y en las condiciones en que está, porque él me llamó el viernes y dijo, no me quisieron dar una pastilla y mi fiebre era alta ahora que estoy en Aurora. El viernes me dijo que lo iban a dejar salir y nosotros fuimos a Sterling. Unos agentes de la cárcel de Sterling, del centro de corrección de Sterling, lo trasladaron a Denver y él me dijo que cuando él entró le checaron la temperatura y tenía la temperatura alta y que le habían hecho las pruebas del COVID, pero que no iba a podernos dar información más porque no lo iban a dejar hablar y que tampoco, si llamábamos, no nos iban a dar información. Y eso fue cierto. Mi sobrina habló esta mañana y le dije, llama y pregunta cómo amaneció, de salud, cómo está. Y le dijeron que no le iban a dar información. Yo hablé con su hija y le dije que llamara también. Ella llamó y le colgaron el teléfono. Ella tampoco pudo hablar con ellos. Fue el motivo que yo hablé con el abogado para que me ayudara porque tengo mucho miedo de que le vaya a pasar algo por la enfermedad, por la pandemia que está ahorita y mirando los números que está alta, es el miedo mío de que él se vaya, que no tenga cuidados dentro de la cárcel y que no tenga nada. Y mirando al abogado que él, me lo recomendaron muy bueno a él y he mirado que ha hecho un trabajo excelente, tengo la esperanza de que algo bueno pase con él, que no vaya a quedarse muerto dentro de esa cárcel.
Okay, so my name is Alma. I am Oscar's sister, and I can answer any questions as thoroughly and honestly as possible. So to give some context, my brother Oscar crossed through El Paso in May of last year. He was detained in El Paso, in the El Paso Detention Center. And during that time, I visited him 2 times. They moved him to Carrizoso one night, and then to Amarillo one night. And then he was moved back to that Carrizoso center. And then he was moved to another detention center, which name I missed, where he was told that he would be released on May 7th, and he would be sent back to Mexico. So at that time, we went to Mexico to see him there because it had been a long time since we had seen him and that he had been detained, but he never arrived. He called me and told me that he was detained in Aurora. They said they would move him to Sterling. And a week later, he was in Sterling. And he was really worried and said that a lot of people were sick with COVID. And I was also seeing those reports of those high number of illnesses with COVID in that jail. I told him not to worry and follow all of the directions, washing your hands, wearing the mask. But he said, how am I supposed to, keep myself safe? My mask is ripped. So I said, well, do your best, use your shirt to cover your face. But I am worried he might have it, and especially with his conditions, his other illnesses, I'm worried about him. He hasn't gotten any pills or any medication to address his high fever. And on Friday, he was supposed to be released, but they transferred him to Denver. They checked his temperature there and did a COVID test. He let me know that. But he said that they probably wouldn't give us any information. And that's exactly right. We've been calling the detention center. His daughter has called, but we haven't heard anything. That's why I reached out to an attorney, because I'm worried that something will happen. And I'm worried that he won't get the care that he needs. But I'm hopeful that my attorney will get us the results that we need and get him safe.
Gracias, Alma. Se fue muy claro todo esto. ¿Hay algo más que quiere decir o seguimos al siguiente orador? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to our next speaker, Elizabeth Jordan from the Civil Rights Education and Enforcement Center. And she is going to give us a little bit of background on these types of cases, what, not specifically Oscar's case, but what else we've seen at the detention center. So voy a pasar la voz ahora a Elizabeth Jordan del Centro de Derechos Civiles y Enforzamiento, y ella va a darnos un poquito de contexto que hemos visto en ese centro de detención y qué respuestas hemos visto de ICE en estos tipos de casos, pero no en el caso específico de Oscar.
Thanks, Jennifer, and hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Jordan. I'm an attorney. I also direct the Immigration Detention Accountability Project at CREEK, or the Civil Rights Education and Enforcement Center. I'm based here in Denver, but we work on issues of ICE detention across the country. And in fact, I am counsel on a case called Freihat versus ICE. That's Fraihat. We filed Freihat versus ICE in August of last year to address some of the long-standing inadequate medical care issues that Henry alluded to earlier in the Central District of California. However, in March, we filed emergency motions specifically trying to push ICE to address appropriately the coronavirus pandemic in their detention centers, which, as you may know, much like jails, prisons, nursing homes, and cruise ships, are places where this virus can spread incredibly quickly given the high density, the open and closed, sort of the open circuit between the detention center and the community, and the nature of the congregate setting that ICE detention presents. We asked that people with risk factors that the public health consensus has agreed put people at risk of substantial risk of serious harm, namely serious complications or death, be identified as a class member in Freihat. And we specifically, the judge has given an illustrative list of those conditions. For example, they include people who are over the age of 55. They include people who have heart conditions. They include people who have high blood pressure and hypertension. And people who have one or more of those conditions in ICE custody are at heightened risk and were designated members of this class by our judge. Accordingly, ICE is required to take several steps to try to keep them safe. The first one is proper identification of people. As Henry also alluded to, ICE has, offers, generally speaking, very poor care. They offer very sort of sloppy record keeping, and we are concerned about their ability to properly identify everybody who runs a heightened risk of coronavirus in their detention centers. So that's the first step. The second step is ICE is required to determine whether continued detention of somebody with these factors is appropriate. Reflecting, again, the public health consensus that the safest place for somebody to be in a pandemic is home with their family, where they can shelter in place. And then third, for those people they do not release, that they take steps within the detention centers to try to mitigate the risk of harm to these people. That includes things like following the CDC recommendations, limiting transfers of people between ICE facilities and new people in from other jail and prison settings, and the like. I will point out that on Friday, our judge issued an order finding that ICE had been, quote, lackadaisical in its response to this pandemic and had ignored the acute risk that people in these detention centers run. And so, I think that unfortunately this case is not a unique example. It is a reflective, illustrative example of the sorts of systemic problems we have been, taking to court since March, and that still persists in the middle of May.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm gonna go ahead and attempt to summarize that in Spanish, unless you wanted to.
Sure, I can try. And you can fill in because I actually didn't take notes on what I said.
Sure.
Mi nombre es Elizabeth Jordan. Yo soy una abogada aquí en Denver con una ONG que se llama Civil Rights Education and Enforcement Center. Nosotros pusimos una querella colectiva contra ICE en agosto del año pasado por las faltas de atención médica adecuada y otros problemas sistemáticos en los centros de detención de ICE. El caso se llama Fryhat versus ICE y está en la Corte Federal en el Central District de California, más o menos Los Ángeles. Y en marzo de este año, cuando ya estaba bien claro lo que estaba pasando con el coronavirus, pusimos 2 mociones emergentes ante el mismo juez en la misma corte para tratar de poder brindar protección a las personas en más alto riesgo en custodia de ICE por el coronavirus, tomando en cuenta la respuesta muy lenta y muy desorganizada que ha mostrado ICE en cuanto a una pandemia como esta. Y quiero comentar que los centros de detención de ICE, igual como las cárceles, igual como los hogares para las personas de mayor edad, están centros donde hay más riesgo para un outbreak, ¿no? O sea, una infección bien rápida, bien grande, por la manera de mantener un lugar donde hay mucha gente, donde hay muy poco espacio. Entonces, el caso es, o sea, el juez en abril dijo que ICE tiene que hacer 3 cosas para las personas en riesgo por sus condiciones médicas. Primero, identificarlos adecuadamente, porque nosotros estamos preocupados dado las experiencias que ya tenemos documentados en ICE de que no están cuidando adecuadamente a las personas, no están identificando las condiciones médicas de todas las personas. Luego, después de identificarlos, ICE tiene que tomar decisión si sea apropiada mantener a esa persona detenida o dejarlo en libertad para poder quedar en casa con sus familias, donde la salud pública está muy clara que es el lugar más seguro de mantener a una persona segura en la pandemia, estar en casa con su familia en vez de estar en una cárcel. Tercero, si ICE no ponga en libertad a una persona, tiene que tomar algunas medidas cautelares dentro del centro de detención para poder tratar de minimizar su riesgo a contraer el virus. Y quiero comentar que el viernes el juez entró una segunda orden diciendo de que ICE ha estado muy lentamente, la palabra en inglés lackadaisical, con su respuesta al virus y que está ignorando el riesgo que está corriendo las personas detenidas en sus centros de detención. Gracias.
Gracias a ti. So I want to just kind of sum up again how we got to the place that we're at before I pass it over to Ana Rodriguez at the Colorado People's Alliance. So quiero dar un resumen de todo lo que hemos pasado hasta ahorita antes de pasar la palabra a Ana Rodriguez del Colorado People's Alliance y tomar sus preguntas. So the American Friends Service Committee and the Colorado People's Alliance have been very concerned about the conditions at this particular detention center for over a decade now, with documented cases of lack of access to medical care. And in recent times, we've seen rolling outbreaks, which have already been mentioned, including mumps, during which we've seen these exact same concerns about access to counsel, about access to appropriate medication, about timely transfer to other medical facilities, all of which are only exacerbated and more life-threatening in this pandemic. So lo que hemos visto, lo que hemos sentido, lo que hemos estado haciendo en mi organización y lo de Ana por más de una década es alzar las preocupaciones sobre el falto de debido acceso al cuidado médico en este centro de detención específicamente. Hemos visto y documentado casos de muerte, casos de personas que se han enfermado más porque no han recibido el debido trato médico, y en los últimos años hemos visto varios diferentes corridos de enfermedad, incluyendo mumps adentro, varicela también adentro de los centros de detención, que las personas no recibieron la habilidad de protegerse ni fueron trasladados al tiempo adecuado a otras facilidades médicos, y la pandemia solo se hace aún más preocupante y aún más riesgo de muerte, esos mismos preocupaciones. También vimos el falta de acceso al abogado, al consejo legal bajo esos otros tiempos y enfermedades. And so in what really worries us and what we've been trying to shine a light on since the pandemic started is the disorganization and the lack of urgency in response to detainees' complaints about not having adequate access to hand sanitizer, to masks, to social distancing. And in the last week, we heard from detainees that they were starting to be placed in cells with more people again. And that they also don't feel that they have enough access to a mask that they can wear 24 hours a day. And so yesterday we supported an action led by medical professionals to deliver 512 certified masks to detainees in GEO, so that if the mask, which easily get ripped, they have a replacement. And they refused to accept those masks despite the fact that there was paperwork tracing their origin and that they are indeed masks that could protect folks like Oscar and other loved ones and community members that are detained right now in GEO. So, ayer intentábamos dar a GEO 512 cubrebocas que son certificados médicamente. Respaldábamos a profesionales médicos que intentaron dar esas máscaras a GEO y tenían todo el papeleo para mostrar que sí son buenos para usar. Como sabemos que las máscaras fácil rompen en detención, también hemos escuchado de los detenidos que otra vez GEO está poniendo más personas juntos en las celdas de lo que deben, y otra vez estamos escuchando de ellos que no tienen el acceso que deben a cosas como para lavar las manos. Entonces, ayer fuimos con esas máscaras y fuimos rechazadas. No aceptaron las cubrebocas. Y sabemos que ese es parte de un patrón de problemas y de desorganización de parte de ICE en ver la salud de las personas, nuestros seres queridos y vecinos que están en su cargo. So, regardless of the reason why anyone is detained in GEO currently, ICE has been ordered to review their public health and their public safety and to make sure that they're taking action and steps to protect folks like Oscar who have hypertension or diabetes and are at high risk for COVID. And so, no, sin importar la razón de por qué está detenido alguien, sabemos que ICE tiene el deber y la obligación de cuidar la seguridad y la salud de las personas que están en su cargo. So given that, I just wanted to review really quickly that in Oscar's case, he was deported in 1999 without being able to finish his probation in a DUI case. And that as far as we can tell, at this point, there's no reason for him to continue being held and for him to have not been released or deported. And that's part of the reason why it's so urgent for his lawyer to be able to speak with him further, is to see what his options are. But he does not have, his only criminal offense that we know of is that 21-year-old offense. And in most cases, ICE deports people without them being able to finish their probation. So it's very confusing and suspect that he's still in custody, that he hasn't been released to his family, who are obviously ready to receive him and help him either return to Mexico or be safe in the United States. So en el caso de Oscar, lo que sabemos es que tiene una condena de DUI desde 1999 y que fue deportado sin poder cumplir su probación, y que eso es el único cargo en su contra, y es un poco confuso porque en todo ese tiempo ICE no lo ha azotado, y por eso es importante que él habla con su abogado para ver si tiene otras opciones. Pero por lo tanto, él califica por ser soltado por su alto riesgo, y también porque tiene familia que está dispuesto a ayudarlo a hacer su vida otra vez en México o a estar seguro aquí en Estados Unidos. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ana Rodriguez from Cardo People's Alliance to talk about what our next steps are and what our asks are.
Sí, exactamente. Así que, pues como dice Piper, este es un caso que nos da el ejemplo de qué tan desorganizado ha sido la respuesta de ICE bajo esta pandemia. En vez de haberlo dejado en libertad con su familia, que ya estaban listos para recibirlos el viernes pasado, en vez fue transferido de regreso a Aurora, cuando tiene estas condiciones que lo ponen muy en alto riesgo y cuando tiene fiebre. Y también estamos viendo que el hecho que no recibió la prueba de COVID hasta ayer y todavía no tenemos las respuestas de esa prueba, nos indica que pues han esperado demasiados días. ¿Por qué esperar tener esa prueba si ya saben que tiene un alto riesgo, si tenía la fiebre desde que lo transfirieron? Tampoco sabemos si está compartiendo la celda con otras personas, no sabemos si él está solo, no sabemos realmente muchas cosas. Entonces, esto nos indica también la falta de transparencia en este centro. El hecho de que ni siquiera su abogado ha podido tener contacto con su cliente para asesorarlo legalmente, para asegurar que él esté recibiendo el cuidado médico adecuado, eso es muy preocupante. So this example really shows the horrible response that ICE as an agency has had to this COVID pandemic, recognizing that here is a person who is at high risk and had a fever, and instead of being released to his family that was ready to receive him, he was instead transferred back to the Aurora facility when again he had a fever and he's at high risk. The other issue that this case shows us is that why did it take GEO several days between when they received him, he had a high fever, and that they submitted that COVID test? In these several days, questions remain of who did he have come into contact with? In the cell that he's currently in medical quarantine, is he sharing the cell with other people? How many people is he sharing that cell with? And the fact that he hasn't been able to speak with his own attorney is also a really worrying situation. So this all indicates to the lack of transparency that exists in this facility, leaves us able to really know, if they're doing things right. And what the little that we do know is that they're not taking the steps necessary to truly protect the health and well-being of those inside. So our demands are that Oscar and anyone else in this facility that is at risk, has these complicating factors, should be released. And at the very least, they should have access to counsel even when they are in medical quarantine, in order to be able to get him out, get him to better medical care, get him transferred to a hospital if necessary. He needs to have access to counsel, as well as anybody else who is lucky enough to have an attorney. They should have access to their attorneys. But at the end of the day, we continue to ask for the release of all detainees, especially those at risk, because we know that the only way they are truly going to be safe is if they are outside of dangerous close quarters that they will have to be in these ICE facilities. So Al fin de cuentas, nosotros estamos pidiendo más transparencia en estos centros de detención y en este caso en específico pedimos que Oscar y cualquier inmigrante que tiene un abogado deberían de tener acceso a su consejo legal aun cuando están en cuarentena. Especialmente cuando están en cuarentena, es importante que sus abogados puedan abogar por ellos y tal vez pedir que los transfieran a cuidado médico mejor, un hospital si están en una situación donde lo necesitan. Pero cuando ni siquiera tienen ese contacto, no tienen la información necesaria para realmente abogar por ellos. Y al fin de cuentas, lo mejor y lo último que se debe hacer para proteger las vidas de Oscar y otras personas vulnerables es de que los liberen, porque esa es realmente la única manera de que ellos van a estar sanos y salvos. And that's why this lack of transparency and all of these issues that we're seeing, as many have said, is systematic. And that is why we have been working for and fighting for more transparency and accountability at local, state, and federal levels. And we are fighting for a piece of legislation that we hope will be introduced next week, once the session begins again, that will bring this facility and any other immigrant detention facility in the state under the jurisdiction of CDPHE, because that will bring us a greater amount of transparency. It will allow us the opportunity to coordinate with CDPHE and have access to that information, so we better, so attorneys and families better know what's going on, and we have another avenue to advocate for vulnerable people. Entonces, por eso hemos estado luchando por más accountabilidad y transparencia en todo nivel, al nivel local, estatal y federal, y por eso estamos luchando por la introducción de una política que traería este y cualquier otro centro en Colorado bajo la jurisdicción y el poder del Estado y la agencia de CDPHE, para que nosotros tengamos la habilidad de abogar por la gente vulnerable con esa agencia cuando algo así pase.
Thank you, Ana. Gracias, Ana. We're going to go ahead and take some questions through the chat now. So vamos a tomar algunas preguntas por medio del chat. Y una de las preguntas es para Alma, si en 99 Oscar estuvo viviendo en Colorado o si en algún momento ha vivido en Colorado. Estás en mudo. Otra vez, sorry. Ok, ahora sí.
Ok. Sí, él estuvo viviendo en Colorado por aproximadamente 20 años.
Yes, he lived in Colorado for about 20 years before that.
Aproximadamente 20 años.
Around, yeah. Gracias, Alma. Thank you.
Nacieron aquí, son nacidos aquí.
And he has 2 children who are both born here in the United States. Okay. ¿Otras preguntas? ¿Alguien más tiene alguna pregunta? So there's also one saying, is this correct? He was charged with a DUI and then deported in 1999 and then attempted to re-enter the country this past year, was detained, and then eventually transferred to Sterling because of unpaid probation fees related to the old DUI case. And I'll ask Henry if that's his understanding. You're also on mute, Henry.
Here, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, my apologies. So that is my understanding. Again, I will just preface this by saying I haven't spoken to him, but that is my understanding of the case he has. I don't have any information on the actual legal case, but my understanding is yes, he was arrested for DUI. I don't know why he was deported, if that was the reason or some other reason, but the summary that you've given there is correct.
And again, we'll be sharing, if at some point Oscar is allowed to talk with his lawyer, with his family again, or with the advocates, we'll be sharing updates from what we learn. Another question, what's the next step if ICE isn't doing what the judge has ordered? Are you filing a lawsuit? So otra persona tiene una pregunta. ¿Qué es el siguiente paso si ICE no está haciendo lo que deben de hacer en dejarlo suelto a Oscar, como el juez los ordenó en general? ¿Van a poner una demanda o qué es el siguiente paso? Y otra vez a Henry y a Elizabeth voy a dar esta pregunta.
Okay, well, from my point of view, what I will probably do is see if I can get, is contact the officer in charge, whom I have previously corresponded with, and see if he can do anything, and also try to get him a bond hearing in front of an immigration judge who works for the Department of Justice, in hopes that maybe we will, get somewhere with that. That's a large response. Of course, I'll leave that to Miss Jordan.
Thank you. So to be clear, this is an ongoing lawsuit, which has required, the judicial order in that lawsuit requires ICE to take these steps. Obviously, what the judge is an administrative review by ICE. We are keeping close watch on that information, and we will be keeping in touch, for example, with Henry if he files a request for a redetermination pursuant to the order in our case. We are aware that ICE does not deserve the benefit of the doubt in this situation. We have already, in fact, begun taking evidence back to court about the implementation of the order, and in response to some of that evidence, was very clear in his order on Friday of this past week that ICE is not doing enough. And so this is an ongoing situation. As far as individual lawsuits for individual people who are at risk, that's obviously a case strategy question for the attorney, the detained person, and their family. But our case is also very clear that individual legal avenues like an individual habeas petition or a bond hearing or what have you are available to people who are class members as well.
Great, thank you both. So what we're doing right now is, what we've heard is that the results in Oscar's case will be back tomorrow, potentially Thursday latest. And so as soon as we have those results, we will be updating, once we've spoken with his family, we'll be updating all of you and what the next steps are. So en que nos llega los resultados del prueba en el caso de Oscar, vamos a estar dejándoles pendientes. Esperemos que esos resultados lleguen mañana, más tarde jueves por la mañana, y seguiremos el caso y los siguientes pasos que responde ICE. De todos modos, si su prueba es negativo todavía, Oscar debe ser soltado para estar con su familia y para estar a salvo debido a que tiene las condiciones que le pone muy alto riesgo de consecuencias de este virus. So whether those results are positive or negative, we'll continue to advocate for his release, given that his medical conditions put him at very high risk of consequences, dire consequences from contracting COVID, and that we know already various employees at the center have tested positive, both GEO and ICE employees, and that it continues to be a very risky place to be with the medical conditions that Oscar has. And we should know the results of those. They told us they would have the test back by tomorrow, but so then I'm saying Thursday morning earliest, just but that's not up to us. That's what we've been told by ICE. Luego hay una pregunta por el apellido de Oscar. Todos están pidiendo, no sé, Alma o Henry, si lo quieren dar su apellido.
Abogado.
Fair enough. I don't think there's any harm necessarily. Last name is Perez Aguirre.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Otras preguntas? Ok, muchas gracias por responder a corto tiempo. Apenas aprendíamos de esto en la mañana, entonces, y por el riesgo a la vida de Oscar y de otras personas en detención, queríamos mover muy rápido en el caso. So, we thank all of you for being here on such a short timeline. We just learned about this morning and wanted to investigate the details and then share them as soon as possible, given the life-threatening consequences, both for Oscar and for other folks in detention. So if you have further questions, you can be in touch with either myself or Ana over text or phone. We included our contact information in the release, and we will update you as soon as we hear anything more. Thank you so much.